Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, one and all. Thanks for joining us in this edition of the BRM Brown Bag. I'm your host, Suresh GP from TaUB Solutions. I'm extremely happy and proud to kickstart our episode 29 of BRM Brown Bag series. For people who are tuning in for the first time, I want to tell everyone that this is an episode for BRMs by BRMs where we share real world experiences of how BRMs drive and inspire the respective BRMs across the organizations globally. And today I have a privilege of having a good friend, Tezcan Vincent, from Hub International. She is a seasoned IT professional with leadership experience across IT functions such as business analysis, IT application architecture, software development, IT operations, project management, quality assurance, and service delivery. Prior to coming to Hub, she held IT director, VP of IT, and CIO level positions and worked across multiple industries, namely telecommunications, managed services, manufacturing, and new insurance. Now, Tess, as we popularly call her, is a firm believer that successful outcomes of an organization come from strong collaboration between business and IT leaders. She also believes that there is a direct connection between relationships and tangible business results. So it cannot get better on kickstarting our new year with Tess. Thanks, Tess, for taking your time and sharing your valuable insights with our viewers today.
Thank you so much, Suraj, for inviting me today, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So today we want to focus on an episode naming importance of defining business relationship management capability within an organization. Because you have had lots and lots of experience doing this aspect. And a lot of people whom we look at worldwide are struggling to understand where do you start, right? A lot of times it begins as a role, a discipline, but how do you really build kind of capability around it? So why don't we kind of get started with why do we need to define this BRM capability? What's the real genesis? Why? Because I think the why becomes more important than the how. So what is your take on that?
Yes, so I think number one thing for me and my team and I actually just been talking about this is that if we don't define the capability and the role, someone else will. Because if this function, this role and capability exists in an organization, people are going to ask BRMs to do things, and the role can drift into something that's not intended to be. So defining it is really, really important. And why we define it is really has to do with how we anchor ourselves back to the company objectives. So every company has their desired objectives and they look for key results that tie to those objectives. And if we don't understand why we have certain roles in an organization and what those roles do, we're not going to be successful in anchoring ourselves to the objectives as well as achieving those key results that we set ourselves out to achieve. So
That's
that's
true.
why.
That's very true that you mentioned about company objectives and organization objectives. So many of the BRMs, when we start around, how much clear are they in terms of objectives? Is that because it's all written in terms of a strategy statement, but how much meaningfully are they able to interpret it?
Every company does have objectives, as you mentioned, right? Intentionally seeking those out, knowing them, understanding them, asking a lot of questions. I think good BRMs are inquisitive,
Right.
right? You got to ask a lot of questions to understand. And I think that's where it begins,
Sure.
right? We have to understand them and anchor ourselves back to that. And I'm just really emphasizing that because success is not going to come from us just going out and doing stuff,
Right.
right? It's really important that we seek out what are the objectives of our organization. And it is different for every organization. I've worked in across industries. So you do have to be grounded to those.
Awesome. Now, what are the things that we need to consider defining the BRM role? Because there's a lot of moving parts as we start to see through it. If we kind of spend more time on one of them, the other ones drift away. So, what are some of those key things that we need to consider defining these roles?
Yeah, one of the first things, Suresh, that comes to mind is culture. What
Right,
I've learned from working in multiple industries in particular and different companies, culture plays a huge role, right? Not only defining what you're going to do, but how you're going to do it.
right,
The culture plays a big role in that. Also, another consideration that I know I've used multiple times in building teams is remembering not to have bias towards business partners.
right,
So when you come in, you're eager, you've got a lot of zeal to show that you have value. And so you're putting a lot of emphasis in connecting with your business partners and so on. But as a business relationship manager, you have the responsibility to be the voice of IT when you're working with your business partners, which means that you really have to spend time with your IT partners just as much and make sure they know your role, make sure that there's good partnership with them. So we need to be very intentional about not having bias towards one or the other. And also measuring the value and the impact is important for the BRM capability. So we need to make sure that what we set ourselves out to do,
right.
is going to, again, tie back to those objectives and that we are very intentional about looking at the impact. So we can't minimize that when it comes to considerations. And then don't be afraid to get into the details. Like one of the things that we've been in, at Hub, being very intentional about, we went down into what are our daily interactions going to look like? What are our weekly interactions going to look like? Are we going to have a weekly interaction with our partners? Are we going to have monthly? What will that look like? And how do we make it consistent? Again, something that I was talking to my team about just this morning. If we're not intentional about consistency, it's not going to happen on its own.
True.
So you can take a BRM who partners with a business partner A in the business, and they are working really, really well, but there's a reason why you need to move that person somewhere else. You should be able to take another business partner, another BRM, and partner them with that a business partner A,
Right.
and that experience for the business partner should be the same. That means it's a consistent practice. So do we set ourselves up to create a consistent practice? We have to pay attention to those things.
Awesome. I think you touched upon some great points about the first one is about culture, as Peter Drucker says, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? And I think it's so important the way that because it's a sense of belonging of how we look at it, and you become a tribe within the company, right? I mean, you resonate with the same philosophy part of it, and it's very interesting that when you ask someone how do you define culture, the best definition I've heard is what do you do when nobody is watching is your true culture, right?
Mm,
And it just comes that because you are just personified about the personal culture as well as the organization culture. But also, you mentioned about the point of consistency, right? It's
mhm.
a lot of times we can leave sense, oh, we're doing well, the business partner relationship is great, so let's move on. Let's not need to have that connectivity. But I think it's important to nurture every relationship for
Mhm.
fostering, and it also requires a lot of time commitment. And also the final part that you talked about is value and impact. I think that's so much resonating, right? Even from the BRM Connect conferences that we have been talking about, the
Yes.
impact and value. I mean, value is talking something with part of it, but impact. Now, one quick question on that line would be, are we able to measure every aspect in terms of impact? Because sometimes it's quantifiable in certain cases, when most of the cases
Yeah.
it's very subtle and it comes to the
Yeah.
OKRs and KPIs and stuff like that. But to be honest, from what you see, how much do you think can be impactful from the role that BRM does? and how much is
Great
still
question.
very touchy, soft way of looking at those non-tangible aspects?
Yes, that is a great question, Suresh. Um, Definitely there's art and science, right? And I'm sure that you've had others in this brown bag episodes talk about this, but I am a firm believer that it's not just about measuring, and everything that is measurable is the thing that makes the most impact. I am not wanting to minimize that we need KPIs. Don't get me wrong, okay? We
Yeah,
do need to set KPIs and we need to pay attention to them, and service level objectives and all of that. So please don't misunderstand, but I firmly believe that there's an art to doing business relationship management that is far more impactful than me measuring that I attended 30 meetings with my business partners this year. So what? Right? What impact did I make? What I'm measuring in my organization is we're in the midst of an important initiative and we need quick decisions with a chief operations officer of one of our divisions,
right,
right?
right.
And a BRM reaches out to that person and immediately gets a response.
Got it. Got it.
Okay. I just tied that relationship to a result.
Correct.
Because there are times when you have people say, I've been waiting for a month and I got no response,
Right,
right?
right.
So how did I measure that?
Correct.
It's through the relationship I am achieving results that sometimes are not KPIs,
Excellent.
right?
That's a very valuable point, that we should not be obsessed with KPIs and OKRs now we call as
Right.
objectives and key results, but more about how are we able to move the needle faster? I mean, decision making. And this is basically trying to save a lot of time, but more importantly, you have that access to your business partners on demand, which I think is a great
Hmm.
way of your relationship quality, relationship index, which is
Yes.
by itself a great quotient to tell us that you are an integral part of this whole equation, right? Great point.
Yes.
Now, who are you the key partners in this particular journey? Who do you think are the key partners who we need to solicit, take feedback, and address?
Yeah, so who is really important, Suresh, as you know, right? So when we at Hub, as an example, set out to develop this business relationship management practice, which we're calling technology business partners in terms of title in our world, we had to be intentional about what our company culture is, what our company structure is. And we have a very unique structure that we're made up of many hubs under the Hub International umbrella. However, those hubs are like companies.
Right,
They have presidents and COOs and so on. And what we had to decide is, who are we partnering with?
right,
And our first step was we're not going to boil the ocean and try to partner with everyone. Our intentional partnership is going to be with the COOs,
hmm,
more operational in nature, because it was a real need for us at the time.
right,
We wanted to show that this capability, this business relationship capability that we're trying to build, is going to have an impact to the organization. We need to partner with our COOs in the field. All right, so now I know who I'm partnering with.
hmm,
Then I had to go and understand, what does this stakeholder, this partner, represent? What are their influencers? So sometimes, though I'm partnering with a COO, there might be influencers within their organizations that I need to also work with and interact with. So understanding that, because that's really important in achieving results. Who influences who and how much influence a partner has, and nurturing those relationships, because what happens after you build these successful trust-based relationships is that there's a pool by the business partner they want to get together to talk about their objectives and set some goals for their organization that they're pulling for you. You're not pushing yourself into being at the table with them, but they're pulling for you to join them. That's what it results in. But again, you had to be intentional about who, because you can't partner with everyone in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very great way to look at it. Who are we serving? Who are we partnering? And also that power influence grid, because sometimes you might want to have conversation with all your partners, but not everybody is going to make that impactful. So you need to kind of pick and choose and also nurture the relationship. That's reflecting again to your earlier point of consistency, right? Consistently
Yes.
looking up, showing up, and being committed to that overall relationship index is important. So finally,
Yes.
how should the capability be deployed for the best results? Because at the end of the day, as a BRM, when we go there, we need to deliver outcome, business results. And that's where will help us stay in this period for a long period of time. And that's the value proposition. So as a BRM, how do you see the capability being deployed to get the best results consistently?
Yeah. Again, a great result because, as you said, rubber meets the road when we do that, right?
Exactly.
So, first, I really believe communication is key, right? At all levels of communication. I mean, I'm very fortunate to be a part of the organization who values relationship building. It's part of our culture. It's in our DNA at Hub International. But even with our leaders within IT, if I'm brought in as one of the experts in this area, that means I'm helping define the role, I'm helping define the practice, and not only making sure that the team that's going to be performing the role knows exactly what we're after, but the leadership has been notified of exactly what we're trying to do and how we're going to go about performing this role. So communication at top levels of the organization, both on the IT side as well as the business side. So everybody knows how to utilize you when they know what you're setting out to do. Also, we have to recognize that BRM, really business relationship management as a practice and all of the capabilities that it asks us to have and to do, it's not just performed by people who have the BRM title, right?
Right,
Like
right.
at Hub, I said our title is Technology Business Partner. We should not put the relationship building responsibility only on the BRM titled people in the
Perfect.
organization. We set out to set the example. We set out to know what our role is and to perform it well. But I think sharing some of those capabilities and competencies with others that build good relationships. So if I'm a head of the service desk, or if I managed a cloud team or the networking team or what have you, it doesn't matter. If I have a role within IT that puts me in a position to interact with business partners, I have to know about some of these skills and competencies. And so I think that's important. And we got to make sure that we make time. I think this is like the most important thing, right? So we spend all this time, working on our mission, visions, values, and we have our goals and objectives, and we've got all the great intentions. But we go out to do our role, and people are saying, oh, my phone doesn't work and my computer, that. And then the next thing you're spending your time doing those things, which, don't get me wrong, to build relationships, sometimes we got to do those things,
Right.
but to not be intentional about where our time really needs to be spent is not a good practice. And honestly, I will give Jeff Warren the credit on this.
Right.
Recently, I attended the workshop that he was conducting on high performing BRMs, and he had a really good template. He really drove this topic home.
Right.
And I took that back and I'm trying to practice that with my team because I know it's very difficult to stay true to the objectives and the goals that we set out to do.
Awesome. That's a great one to kind of summarize the aspect of how do we deploy the best results. And that's a good point that we mentioned that there is a course of high performing BRM that Jeff Warren does it. I did that last week, and it was a great experience to do it. So whether you are a a new BRM or a experienced BRM, it doesn't matter. There's some great pearls of wisdom and nuggets that you will gain by practical strategies for high performing BRM. That's a shout out for Jeff Warren's high performing BRM. But what a way to wrap this up episode of 29, Tess. Some very valuable ways of looking at building BRM capability within the organizations, looking at what is important, looking at the partner ecosystem, but also finally delivering outcome of results. So for me, this has been so valuable for all our viewers who are looking at building BRM and also trying to do it as a team, because as the definition of team, together everyone achieves more. So if you are trying to build that capability, let's not refrain to be restricted to just the BRM role, but also to the rest of the organization, because guess what? You are actually professing the value of BRM across the organization, and that becomes more valuable in nature. I hope you enjoyed this particular session, viewers, of Tess' thought process on building BRM as a capability. It was a fantastic session, and we really thank you for your valuable time being spent here, and I hope to see you sometime again in person in one of the other conferences.
I sure hope so as well, Suresh. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, viewers. I want you to look at these episodes, learn from that, post your questions, because we are in a mission to serve the single global BRM community in the way that you can take inspiration from each one of these leaders who are driving in from the front, like Tess in Hub International and rest of the organizations as well, and make this look magical. Remember, your final thoughts, Tess, on what's the future of BRMs with all AI in picture? What's your closing comment? I know it's pretty solid, but what do you think the role of BRM is as we start stepping into the future?
Yeah, AI has brought some great things for us, as well as some concern on some people's parts. But really, my position on it right now, Suresh, is that we are in the business of relationships. We are human beings, and we were created to desire relationships.
Right.
So I think that the future for business relationship management is very bright because there is no replacement for human touch. And that's what we do.
Excellent.
That human factor is big part of our role, and I think we're here to stay.
Awesome. So Ethnic Sounds reinforces us. We are all social animals. We need touch, feel, and the warmth of love and affection to build relationships, and relationship-centered organizations thrive in the future. So thanks everyone for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in our next episode of BRM Brown Bag series. Like, comment, share to the rest of the group so that more people can impact. But at the end of the day, we, Tez and I, and other fellow BRMs are looking at impacting the larger part of the ecosystem. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.